Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is a little prologue video I'm gonna put together for the new series, Nova Praxis. Because unlike the Pathfinder series that we're doing, this one kind of has an established universe. So I had the other role players kind of read through kind of the stuff so that their characters would be able to the characters would have the knowledge that their characters would have at that time. For instance, they would know about some of the history that went on, the technology that's available, and other things like that. So I wanted to give a video just to kind of give a little explanation to you guys to kind of what's going on, just so y'all have an understanding of what's going on when when we're actually, role playing this out. Um, so the whole idea of this universe is basically at one point in time a singularity occurred, and the singularity is defined as basically like some point in something that happens that transcends human, um, I guess, like knowledge or technological breakthrough or something like that. This came in the form of the creation of this AI called Mimir, um, which basically created this technological boom and led to things like interspace travel, the a lot of the technology that we'll see in throughout the series as well. Um, but at some point, nobody knows why, but the Mimir AI just mysteriously shut down, and so there was kind of like it kind of became the quest for finding Mimir technology, because basically humanity didn't get it all in like one bundle. Like basically the like Mimir kind of like sieved it throughout the time it was active. And I'm assuming hit away some of the technology. The book isn't quite 100% clear about how that happens, but basically there's member technology just hidden uh, throughout the Earth actually. Um, Now, after it mysteriously shut down, humanity moved on to a new technological system called compilers. Now, this is derived from Mimir technology, and what it is it takes raw material and reconstructs it into a finished product. So, for example, it's used from everything from like food to uh, any kind of manufacturing you can think of. So, I mean, you could literally put in like let's see here, a lime and some vodka and some ginger ale, and boom, Moscow Mule. You could put in like a thing of steel and some lead and some gunpowder, and boom, you got yourself a rifle. A little bit of cotton, some wood, boom, you got a bed. That's basically how the compilers work. They take raw materials and um, create whatever humanity wants or needs. Now, unfortunately, this kind of devastated the whole economy because nobody needed to manufacture things anymore. Businesses were really kind of shut down because there was no manufacturing, no selling, no nothing really. I mean, just the whole economy system was just thrown out the window. I mean, you can think of it. You just sit at home, throw in a couple of cubes of that represent those materials, and boom, you got your thing. No need to even leave the house. So at that point in time, there was a coalition that was established that created the rep system. Now the rep system is basically uh, I don't want to say a popularity system, but how well somebody is thought of, how well a society thinks of you. So basically, everyone is assigned a reputation based off of the good deeds that they did towards the towards society. Uh, anything, uh, anything they did to advance society or help somebody out increases their rep rating. Anything that they do against society to hurt society brings their reputation down. Now, what this means is the higher your rep, basically the more things you can purchase. It's kind of like, um, I really don't have a basis on anything, but let's just say like the more society is there we go, free drinks. The more people like you, the more free drinks you get, basically. So you're basically trading on your reputation rather than an actual physical monetary thing. Um, so that's kind of the basis on all the technology that's going on. So I'll just do a quick, like, abridged version of the history. So, like, you also know, like, what years we're kind of looking at. Because after the singularity, the whole timeline actually, their version of noting time actually changes to post-singularity. So, for example, at singularity, the singularity occurs, and then, the whole global society actually declares it as a global threat and a weapon of mass destruction, because as from its creation, or from its existence, it was the whole system of compilers came about, devastated the economy, weapon systems just skyrocketed. The wars actually got escalated to a like like almost to like World War III standards. Though there was no actual World War III, but like conflict just rose to the roof. Um, then you see like 1 to 3 years after post singularity, NASA actually sent a probe to Europa, and there they found a jellyfish-like creature. So everyone got all excited, about this possible alien life form. So they actually banded together into the United Nations Explorations Directive. So basically, you kind of see your first like global like equivalent of the UN for space travel, space exploration. Also, important note to add is at this point in time, the average lifespan is 180 years. So, obviously, there were some medical advances. Now, in this, to put this into perspective for us with our time stamps, 1 to 3 years after post singularity is basically 2043 to 2045. So you can think of it as 2042 is when the singularity occurred. So basically, then from 46 to 50, that's when the compilers devastate the economy, and everyone's kind of struggling to create a more stable life back on Earth. Whereas the expedition team that they sent to Europa actually begins to study the life form, and they find that it's actually a complex life form, and this leads to an even further um, what the book dubs space craze of the 40s. And so you see like I don't know, like a ramped up version of the space race for us, where every nation is trying their best to get out there and not only colonize, but find these alien life forms and stuff like that. So then we move on to 51 and 52, which is a big breakthrough, especially for our characters. And that's the upgrade of broadcast technology. Now, what this means is basically they've created a technology that can deliver energy through broadcast waves. So what you have are cities who are living in basically like a dome of energy, and anything that's in the dome is powered up by that energy. Now, all of these generators are, of course, maintained by the cities and the government as well. Um, but this advancement just basically makes cables and batteries obsolete. So you see technology move from these portable and I guess line derived power sources to this wireless form of power. Now this kind of comes in play with our characters, because if a character uses, for example, a particle accelerator laser as his weapon, you'll also hear us refer it to as a pack gun. Um, when they're in the sphere of that power, that gun can never run out of energy. But the moment they leave the dome of power, there is actually a degrading effect of how much power it has available. So think of it like a charged up battery that's not plugged into the wall anymore. Um, then, let's see here. Then in 53 to 60, cold fusion reactors are actually created by the Japanese, and this actually helps lead to the first cold fusion spaceships that are created in the 60s and 61 to 66. And this helps push humanity out further into the universe because it allows for a more efficient mode of space travel. Um, Also, an important thing to mention is at this point in time, transhuman movements are kind of on the rise. Uh, the whole idea of augmentation and things like that is actually rising in popularity. So you see more and more people augmenting themselves, and so there's a more transhuman movement of people who are trying to basically bring this out, make it, create more advances in this, because it's improving on human life, basically, is how they see it. Now, at this point in time, after the first cold fusion starship is created, um, there is a unification of Earth countries that are created by the EAU, basically, and they call it the Federation of Earth. Now, there are a couple of countries that aren't too keen about joining the Federation. Let me see if I can find a little snippet that says. Okay, here we go. Some of the people who didn't want to join because they wanted to maintain their own identity were United States, Switzerland, Brazil, and Germany. And now those are just some examples, some major examples. There were a lot of other countries as well that didn't want to join, and the book kind of alludes to them, but never straight out says who they are. So then, at the late 60s, we have the apotheosis is performed for the first time. Now this is important because this actually, at the point our characters are playing, this denotes basically like 2/3 of the races available in this game. Basically, apotheosis is the digitizing of the human brain. So you are basically creating yourself you are basically downloading yourself into a program, and that becomes your, I guess, soul or mind or anything like that, however you want to look at it. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of people got really, really upset about this. In 67 to 71, you have the purist movement, where the humans who haven't had any augmentations done to them start making movements about maintaining what it is to be human. That we've gone too far with the augmentations, and now with apotheosis available, we're becoming something not human. Another thing to technology-wise, another thing to note is that during this time, the first space elevator is designated for civilian use. So what you see is a move of the colonization of Luna, basically our moon, which if you look at my picture right here, boom, right there. But the space elevator was actually built by the Alliance. Now the Alliance is basically all the people who didn't want to join the Federation of Earth basically banded together and joined their own alliance. So it's kind of stupid. They're like, we want to maintain our individuality, so we're gonna band together and create another group of friends. But they managed to build the first space elevator in Brazil, nicknamed the Beanstalk, and they open it up for civilian use and start up the colonization of Luna. There's also a increase of the colonization of Mars as well, thanks to the cold fusion spaceships. Flying to Mars is, or well, yeah, flying to Mars is more of an option. Um, so around this time, we see some politics movement that kind of leads into a big event. This is kind of like the first stone in the pond, if you will. Basically, the Federation cuts off all trade with the Alliance until Brazil lowers the taxes for Federation usage of the beanstalk. So basically, if anyone from the Federation wanted to use the beanstalk to go to Luna, they had to pay a tax. And the Federation wasn't happy about that. So they're like, we're going to stop trading with you. And so Brazil is like, all right, well, then you can't use our beanstalk. So then, the Federation now like is kind of like, well, we got done kind of fucked up. Well, let's build our own beanstalk in Africa. So the human, uh, so we have this, our first kind of like, I don't want to call it full on conflict, but political conflict between the two organizations. Um, And you also see a divergence of the human race as well between those who support apotheosis and those who are the pures. And then in 75 to 78, the Human Preservation Act is passed, and basically this was basically both the Alliance and the Federation sitting down and saying, all right, look, we're going to allow transhumanism to continue, however, it needs to continue under certain regulations. Because we do recognize that some things go a little too far, basically. And so the Human Preservation Act is passed, and it's a global law, and for the most part, I would say it's followed. But I'll get into that later. Um, then the Alliance develops the anti-particle exchange reactors. Now, this is basically like a controlled... oh wait, no, that's not it. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. This is actually an improved version of the cold reactor. But the problem with it is, let's see here. What was it? What was the problem with the anti-particle reactor? Da, 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 Ah, okay, okay. So that's what was going on. So unfortunately, the anti-particle reactor exchange reactor thing uh, was so hard to build that manufacturers couldn't keep up. The production industry couldn't keep up with the demand for them, and so I guess you could equate it to the to the to the Switch right now. How Nintendo just can't keep up with demand. I guess they can, but I mean they were kind of surprised in the beginning. But that's the kind of what happened is they came out with this technology, everybody wanted it, and they didn't have enough supply for the demand. Um, so then in 82 to 84, this is kind of what I was getting at earlier. Due to the apex, the article anti-particle acceleration exchange reactor, um, also known as the apex. Due to its power, the Alliance is able to create a stable wormhole from, where did it create it from? From, let's see here, Italy to the moon. So basically, this is your first jump gate of instantaneous travel. So there was actually an Italian man. He was the first one to jump through it. What did they name him? Massimo Lorenzano was the first one to do instantaneous travel from Italy to the moon. So this kind of opened up a whole new technological drive because now people wanted to upgrade this technology so that it could be applied to ships, because then they can not only is Mars and Venus the two closest planets an option for colonization, but the whole solar system. Um, Unfortunately, there was an accident in 85 to 92 where a destabilized wormhole basically implodes. Thousands die, 6 square miles of lunar colony is destroyed, and some of Seattle, Washington as well. So planetary gates are kind of taken offline, and new regulations are set up to the where they're like, okay, these gates can only be opened in empty space. No more of this, opening them up on land, stuff like that. Let's see here. This is also the time period, little time period which you see the escalation of the tension between the Alliance and the Federation as a pro-Federation loyalist, extremist loyalist, I guess I should say, uh, sets off a bomb in the beanstalk in Brazil. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of damage. It took like, let's see here, what does it say? 3 months to fix it. So for 3 months, transport between the Luna and Earth was shut down. Uh, so you can imagine the colonists on Luna are pretty pissed because they're not getting their supplies. It now has to come through via spaceship. Um, Now the Federation denied any knowledge of the actions, but it did, I gotta say, increase the tension between the two and actually started these two into what would later be a major war. Um, so because of this, that you see a movement in the technology manufacturing of the two coalitions into military. Starships are actually outfitted with weapons for the first time, and you just see a full-on movement of military stuff. Um, and at the time, just to kind of give you a general idea, for the most part, Luna is largely controlled by the Federation, whereas Mars is largely controlled by the Alliance. Just to give you an idea, just of, alright, Alliance is here, Federation here, and then, both of them. So then we see an advancement of the cold fusion technology where they're actually able to kind of scale it down. And what this does is it gives you access to smaller spacecraft. Basically, like, I guess to put it in airplane terms, like from before all the spacecrafts were like bombers, alright? Or for those of you familiar with space terms, like frigates. Well, I guess that's more naval terms, but you get what I'm saying. Before the cold fusion reactors were so big, they were really big ships. But with the scaling down of the cold reactors, they're able to make destroyers, basically effectively fighters, things like that. Small scale spacecraft. And the jump gate technology also improved that they now had a kind of like a ring system to where they were able to create these rings that spaceships could go through, and they pretty much launched them into space. And so you basically had jump gates. So if anyone is familiar with the anime of Cowboy Bebop, those little transfer gates thing, the hyperspace gates that they use, that's kind of like what it is. For those of you not familiar with it, think of a giant ring just floating in space, and well, two, I guess, in two different locations. When you go in one ring, you come out the other. So this also began, the whole movement of colonizing planets that are farther away from Earth, for example, Mercury and stuff. And with the opening of the Mercurial Gate, you see kind of a movement to the energy side of things, because what you have is like an increase of solar farms being created on Mercury, basically. And they're just, well, I mean, when you're that close to the sun, I mean, come on. Solar energy is going to be through the roof. Um, then the first galactic communication network is set up from 93 to 94. Um, these are kind of based on comm buoys. Basically, think like a huge web, and or even better, think of our cell phone system. Um, a single tower can only broadcast so far, so you need to piggyback off of a second tower to get over longer ranges. So basically, that technology put into space. Um, Also, at this time, you have the Apex reactors are finally are well, I guess not finally, but improved a little bit more, and you see the first Dreadnought Ravager class of spaceship, which are like I would compare it to like battleship carrier kind of levels. Um, where is that? Huh. I like how they say they started exploring something and they don't have it on the map. Okay. Um, well, it says here that they started exploring the Sirius system, and this kind of became a exploration race between both the Federation and the Alliance. Um, the Sirius system apparently had a planet very much like Earth. Had no sentient life or anything like that, and it was apparently the book compares it to the Mesozoic era. Um, and then you get your first spacecraft carrier. So basically, like, I guess I was wrong earlier about comparing the dreadnoughts to the carrier, because then we make actual carriers. Um, let's see here, and then we start colonizing Prolouge, which, if I remember correctly, yes, is a different system right next to ours. The distance is 8.5 light years to give you an actual number. Uh, and here's a little information on Proach as well. Let's see here. And it's the Alliance? Oh no. Alliance and Federation. So once again we have a colonization race between the two. So all this is, escalating their whole uh, tensions and whatnot. And then finally in 2100, the consolidation, they've had enough and the consolidation wars begin. So basically, over the next 10 years, Alliance and Federation forces are waging war on land, seas, air, space, anywhere, everywhere, basically. Um, but the problem is a lot of the powers within the Alliance and Federation throw regulations out the window, basically, and you start seeing multiple large-scale um, destructions of planets, stars, colonies, you name it, they destroyed it. Also, around this time, medical technology has advanced to where humans now live 250 years. Um, and let's see here. Oh, and also at this point in time, humanity has also colonized every planet in the solar system. And the Martian city Olympus also has the highest population of any non-Earth city. So you can say Mars is probably the second most populated planet out of everyone, which I think in this picture I'm showing you of the. Now, but this is what I'm showing you right here is basically what the population levels are while we play the game, because we're still not up to current time. But yeah, it looks like definitely Mars is the number one. Well, it's number one now because something happens on Earth. Um, but it would be number two at this point in time. Now, once again, kind of coloring the Federation as the one going too far. The Federation creates a technology called the technophage. Now, this is basically like a swarm of all-devouring nanobots who just are like locusts of the technological world. And it basically destroys everything. And the Federation loses control of it, and massive amounts of people are just destroyed. I mean, like, the entire Earth is just devastated. Um, so people, you see a mass exodus of the people of Earth moving to Luna, Mars, Venus, Mercury, all those places. Uh, you see people doing a lot of desperate moves and things like that because none of the technology they have is able to really do anything significant to the technophage. None of the advanced weaponry they created, nothing. And the next problem comes in the fact that the technophage then kind of, I guess, evolves is the right word, or advances, because then the technophage starts using all this metallic ash that it's been, everything it devours basically turns into some kind of ash, and so it starts taking this ash and starts creating war machines of its own. So basically with these war machines being created, humanity now has, a second thing to fight. It's now just not these nanomachines, it's these machines that are rising from the ashes as well. So just to put it into comparison, I guess you could call it Terminator level esque war machines. Excuse me. Now at this time there are a couple of different things going on in the world. For example, the majority of the Japanese population actually goes through apotheosis and basically upload themselves off the planet as a form of exodus. China, unfortunately, something happened in their area of Earth where the technophage went through I guess, once again, a different kind of evolution or something like that, or advancement, to where it created itself to be a lot more aggressive. And so, the majority of the Chinese population is actually devastated, and those who were left, immediately left off planet. Let's see here. So with everything pretty much destroyed, a mass exodus going on, government is kind of thrown out the window. What happens is you see a establishment. Let's see here. Called. Let's see here. Did I get this right? Yeah. So basically, what happens is now that there's no more government, everything kind of falls to the corporations to kind of organize things and provide stuff for the civilians and whatnot. Once everyone is off, of course, Earth is put on quarantine, and pretty much nobody is allowed in. And these corporations basically pull together and create what is known as the coalition. And different companies kind of banded together to create houses. So the coalition is based on these houses. And I'll go into the houses later, because each one kind of has their own background and history and significance as well. But for now, I'm going to focus mainly on the history. Um, so the houses begin to replace the corporations because the corporations begin making alliances within themselves. And so there's this kind of moment of self-reflection on humanity as a whole, and you see a move back from weapon building, military focus to distributing wealth to the poor and humanity and things like that, and bringing up the standard of living. And then in 2123, you see a purist movement on a ban, asking for a ban on apothetheists. This derives heavily from, the technophage, because you got to imagine humanity at this time is very not technology friendly, due to the whole, planet being devastated. And so what happens is you start getting kind of like these little mini civil movements, as well as what would you call them? Isolated incidents, I guess. At this point in time, there aren't any organizations about it, so isolated incidents, yeah. And of course, Olympus is now kind of like the capital of the system, I guess I should say. So a lot of these incidents are happening in Olympus, and I mean, as you can tell, the majority of the Earth's population went to Mars. Those who survived. So what happens next is the remnants of the Alliance and Federation governments kind of see the coalition as as basically an act of traitorism. Basically, people who were getting together to do their own thing. So what you see then is a unification between the Alliance and the Federation, who are now turning against this coalition, who are trying to gain back the power that they had as the ruling governments at the time, and basically form a resistance. Let's see here. Now, the main focus of the remnants is that their key points that they're against the coalition of is the reputation system and a lack of privacy in coalition space. So in coalition-controlled colonies, what you have is almost like 24/7 surveillance. And the reason for this is the world is basically a series of wireless routers. So as everyone goes through the apotheosis process, for people who are Sims, they move through what they call the mesh. And the mesh is basically this series of, like I said, wireless routers, and they're established everywhere in these colonies. And basically it allows people to kind of just basically jump through each router and move along as if they had a real body. Now this is also used by physical beings like the sleeved and the purists as basically the internet. So through this, the coalition actually monitors all of the civilians 24/7. Now, of course, there's not like complete. There are a few areas where the coalition is like, all right, we're not going to put cameras, for example, bathroom, bedroom, at your place, but everywhere else in the house is surveyed or surveillanced. No, surveyed. I think that's the right word. So then, so what you see then is the rise of the rebel groups. The Alliance gets itself together and calls itself the Talons of Freedom. The Federation gathers together and calls it Jacob's Hand. Oh wait, no, that's just a remnant group. Oh wait, no, yeah, that's what it is. Okay, Jacob's Hand. Um, and so there's a huge kind of military movement on their end as they start grabbing spaceships and military equipment and stuff like that. Now, I just realized that I used a term that some terms that I think I need to clarify real quick. Sleeved and sim. So basically, when you go through Apotheosis, there are basically two outcomes. One, you stay a digitized program, a sim, basically a simulation. Those people exist completely in a digital realm, and they see the world in simulated environments, basically. So, like, when a group of people consisting of both sim and regular people are in a room, the regular people see a room, but the sim will see a forest, a lake, a beachfront, something along those lines, and they react or interact with the environment through that simulated environment. For example, switching to a different mesh would involve like maybe going through a door or walking over a hill, going down a path. Turning something on would involve usually some kind of action. Um, it could be any kind of action. You could, I don't know, throw a rock into the pond and boom, light comes on, kind of thing like that. Sleeves are basically the people who have chosen to have physical forms, but it goes a bit further in the type of sleeve that you choose. There are two types of sleeves, biosleeves and cyber sleeves. To put it into comparison, biosleeves are basically androids. Um, they're they're I guess they have a lot more organic features so that they look more human, whereas cyber sleeves tend to be more robotic in nature. Not to say that they're just straight on like like the robot on Lost in Space. It's not just like a straight robot. It's still a humanoid robot. I like to make the comparison to the Terminator robots, is that they're very human, and they do have human features as well. They're made to look human-ish, but you can always tell that they're a robot, basically. They, I will also point out that cyber sleeves also do have an augmentation where they can get themselves a layer of what do they call it, a bio sleeve, I think, or something like that. I don't know. I forget the name of the augmentation, but it's like they get a layer of skin, basically. So think of, once again, I'm gonna go back to the Terminator. They in the beginning they're all fleshy and everything like that, look like humans, but then shit happens and all of a sudden half their face is missing and you can tell they're a robot. So it's kind of like that, but the flesh simulant does not look as passable as a biosleeve. You can tell that they're not human, you know. Um, whereas a biosleeve can actually have a chance of passing as a regular person. Um, so I just wanted to clarify that before I moved on. Um, oh, and one other thing I guess I should say. Sleeves, their core, basically, is in their sleeves, and they can transfer the core from body to body so they can change bodies, whenever they want. Sims, since they don't have a physical like body, Their core, basically their hypothesized soul, brain, intelligence, I don't know, however you want to put it, is housed on some kind of physical computer, hard drive, drone, something of that nature. Uh, so to get back, um, oh, at this time, there was also some strange activity in the technophage, and it started behaving weirdly. Uh, so people believe that it was showing signs of another step of evolution. But as they were still quarantined, they couldn't do like actual tests. And that brings us to 2136 to 2140, basically the present. The total population of humanity is estimated to be around 94.6 million. 80% is registered citizens of the coalition, while the 20% are those who are called apostates. Basically, they're the people who reject the coalition, the rep system, the surveillance, basically everything the coalition stands for. And they live in the outskirts of town in these rebel cities, basically. Not all of them, however, live in these desolate kind of places. Some of them do manage to smuggle themselves into coalition-controlled cities and things like that. However, there is a heavy crackdown on anyone who is an apostate. Um, but as the houses sometimes need off the books work, apostates are always high on the list for expendable resources. Um, there is also each house, I believe every house. Uh, yeah, I believe so. Every house has some kind of rule or system in place to where apostates can join the house, but it's usually done in such a fashion that it is almost like impossible to get in. At this point in time, 35% of people have undergone apotheosis, so there's still a majority of purists living amongst the population. Uh, let's see here. Basically, you have the transhumans pushing the technology front, whereas the purists are pushing the civil anti-technology front. There are a lot of terrorist organizations that pop up from the extremist sides of these groups, and that's pretty much where we are at this point in time. Uh, so I guess the next thing I will go over is the houses. Um, let's see here. Give me a second to flip through the book. Boom. Alright. So, yeah. Okay. There are basically 6 houses. There's House Cipriani. We haven't really decided. I think 2 in our group pronounce it Cipriani. I sometimes say Cipriani, so however you wanted to say it. They're a house that every house has basically their own evolutionary agenda. For Cipriani, it is purists. Their origin lies in a Italian automotive industry, Egyptian clothing industry, and the Saudi Arabian energy co- uh, corporation. So basically, you have energy, local transportation, not interplanetary or anything like that, but like local transportation, and some textiles. Um, every house kind of has their own edge in the market or a specialty. As I said, Kipriani has the basically a monopoly on the energy field. They also have a lot of the intercity vehicle market, as well as your basic I guess clothing needs is the way I would put it. Um, they have a pretty tense relationship with a lot of the houses, especially let's see here, especially if I remember correctly, the Kimura, due to its transhuman beliefs. But the problem is even though these houses may have differing evolutionary agendas, with each house having a corner on the market, they are almost forced in some ways to deal with each other. If you want interplanetary transportation, you have to deal with House Dalianis. If you want energy, you have to deal with Kipriani and stuff like that. So what happens is you have this duality of society where you have the light and the dark, where the light is basically all these houses working together for the preservation of humanity, and the the advancement of humanity. Whereas underground in the shadows, you basically have these houses duking it out for economical rights. So as an example, Kipriani is currently kind of going toe to toe with Kimura over simulated. Let's see here. What is the actual technical term? Virtue vac. So basically, they're virtual vacations. And at the moment, Kimura is the current market leader, and Kipriani is trying to edge them out. So with that, there's a lot of tensions due to coinciding interests. Uh, but at the same time, Cipriani also has some ties where you could call them kind of not tense, but tentative. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. Tentative ties with Dalianis and Silva. Uh, Dalianis, of course, as I said, if you need transport done, it has to be due through Dalianis. And Silva is basically their go-to person for technology needs. Silva is also kind of like, I'll get into that when I go into House Silva. It's kind of hard to explain these the house relationships without getting into the other house's interest, but that's pretty much Cipriani. Um, Dalianis is, as you've heard me before, is basically the transport house of them all. They basically, if any transportation is done, it is done by this company, or this house. Um, they also have a large market, a large control of the market of the rail and coil guns, as well as the combat drones. Now, the rail and coil guns, basically, rail technology and coil technology have been reduced to such an extent that they are basically your modern day rifles. And what they do is each one, fires a projectile using that technology. And for that reason, rail and coil technologies are the only ones that have actual silent, uh, like silenced fire. Uh, like in nowadays, like it's kind of like switching from burst fire to auto fire. On those kind of weapons, you can actually switch them into subsonic mode, and what happens is the bullet that's fired doesn't break the sound barrier, and so it maintains silence as when it's fired. So it's highly valued by your Black Ops groups, as well as your more unsavory assassins and whatnot. Um, let's see here. For their backing, like their origins, I guess I should say, they have a heavy European influence. And but it was the alliance. It was alliance European influences. So think Greek, Italian, and it doesn't mention what the third one is. So the third one is up to your imagination. um, Dalianis really only has good ties or alliances with House Jinzan and Kimura, mostly because those houses strictly hire Dalianis for their transportation needs and don't really try to edge into Dalianis's marketing interest. The other ones, however, either try to exploit or um, just straight up go against House Dalianis' interest, and thus it has a pretty tense relationship with the other houses. Um, but they maintain a status quo, as I said, because of Dalianis' uh, major control on transportation. Um, oh, and I forgot to mention, their evolutionary agenda is purist as well. Next is House Jinzan, which is basically the house from uh, Chinese corporations. Now, they are what I would call the most extreme purist of all the houses. I mean, Kipriani is pretty uh, anti-transhuman to the point where only like 3% of its staff is transhuman. Um, but Jinzan takes it to the next level. Due to the aggressive strain that happened in China, Jinzan is fearful of pretty much everything technology. Um, which is, I guess, a kind of hard thing to do in this day and age when technology rules, you know. But they go to such extreme lengths that Jinzan actually maintains an active blockade of Earth where they constantly fire missiles and weapons of mass destruction into Earth to try and, I don't know, like, they describe it as keeping back the technophage. So at some point I would assume that that evolution that they were spotting uh, during near present day could possibly be the technophage trying to leave Earth's atmosphere, you know, something along those lines. We don't really know. The book doesn't go into too much detail about it. Maybe during one of the missions it'll be brought to light. But at this point in time, we don't really know. All we know is that they maintain a blockade and constantly launch weapons down to Earth. Um, their market power lies in basically logistics. Everything from food, everything, everyday needs, is provided by House Jinzan. They also have the corner of the market on explosives. So they're heavily into mining and mineral exchange as well. Um, and of course, you know, that also leads into military technology as well. Uh, with also some security technology and services provided as well. Oh, and due to their mineral market, they're also heavy into the construction side of things. Um, Jinzan is really like the odd man out of the houses. They're the friend that nobody really likes. I mean, they do have an alliance with Dalianis, but for the most part, Jinzan does not get along well with any of the houses. Um, so they're kind of the odd man out. Next we have Kimura, which is the only is one of the only two houses that have a transhuman agenda. Uh, and they basically are a combination of Japanese and Korean companies. Um, it's a little interesting, their background, in that the companies originally, when they were on Earth, were rivals in technology, and they would had a history, I guess I should say, of corporate espionage and sabotage, and they kind of adopted a methodology of whatever the cost, we're gonna make something better than them, kind of thing like that. Uh, all the chips were on the table basically. No rules, just results. But after the technophage, they kind of had this meeting where they're like, we can stop fighting each other and gain full control on our markets, on our technological market, and make all the other houses subservient to us. And so that's what they did. So they made House Kimura, which between the two basically controls uh, pretty much all your computer software, cyber sleeves, your cybernetic augmentations, your virtual reality software, and all your recon warframes. Now, your recon warframes, those are basically your, think of them as mechs, basically. And recon mechs are the smaller of the warframes. Their focus is on agility. Well, I mean, recon agility. Small surgical strikes, basically that kind of stuff. They're not big into the more weapons is better kind of ideal. Um, Now another thing important to note is House Kimura adopted the kind of stratagem that the two companies had when they were rivals with each other, in that to those that they see as rivals, they are willing to do anything and everything to make sure that they keep their superiority in their field. Um, this does rub some of the houses wrong, but because their technology is the best that there is, it's kind of just accepted, I guess I should say. For the most part, the houses try to stay away from their part of the market because they know at the moment they try to step into these areas of influence that Kimura has, they know that they are bringing down hell upon themselves. So if a house does make a move on Kimura's corner of the market, it is usually done through like multiple shell corporations and some third party that has absolutely no relationship with the house. They go through extreme lengths to make sure that nobody knows that they were the ones involved. Because of that, I should also note that because they're high technology, almost all the houses use Kimuran technology. Um, and I know I was talking about Jinzan that was totally anti-technology, but as I said, to live in this live in the universe at this point in time, you do have to have some technology. So a lot of the computers and things of that nature are provided to House Jinzan. I would say that the biggest rival to Kimura, or maybe the most antagonistic to Kimura, would be Silva and House Soraya. Soraya basically because Soraya is the biggest contender in the military market against Kimura. and Silva is basically the biggest contender on the sleeve market. And so speaking of Silva, they are the second transhuman house of the six, but their focus is more on biosleeves, biotech augmentations, and pack weaponry. So while Kimura has the cyber side of everything, Silva is more on the bio side of everything. Um, so they're at a constant rivalry with Kimura over the sleeve market as well as augmentation market. Um, Now, I said that they have a tense rivalry, but at the same time, as I said, there's a kind of duality going on where underneath tensions are high, but on the surface deals are being made. And one of those surface deals recently happened between Silva and Kimura to where they actually created I don't want to say a semi-alliance, but they created a partnership to where they're combining their technologies um, to expand their shipbuilding programs. Um, what what will come of this? I don't really know. Once again, the book kind of leads it off as kind of a question in the air. I'm assuming because that there will be a mission at some point in time where this will all be uh, played out. So we'll kind of see what's going on there. Um, I should also note that Silva's origins are basically actually the whole North America, United States, Canada, and Mexico. Uh, Also some Brazilian as well. Um, I guess that's pretty much it for them. Uh, as the o- as one of the only two technologically geared houses, House Silva has a close relationship with Soraya. Now, House Soraya is basically the remnants of Russia. Um, they are the biggest military technology providers of the market. Assault warframes, ground vehicles, vehicle and personal armor. Basically, if it can shoot and if it can stop a bullet, they make it. Um, House Soraya also has a very aggressive, very open methodology of getting technology where they will, in the open, steal technology from the other houses and reverse engineer it, making a cheaper version of the market um, available to the market, I guess I should say. Um, so this breeds a lot of hostility towards House Soraya, who has kind of this uh, pirate mentality, I guess would be the right way to put it. Um, so they do have a lot of tensions with a lot of the houses, but as the biggest military manufacturer, a lot of the companies have to kind of overlook some of their actions so that they can have the weapons to defend themselves. Jinzhan actually relies on them heavily for a lot of their weapons as well. Um, I would say that the houses that have the biggest problem with Soraya tend to be Kimura and Dalianis. Or would it be Dalianis? No, I'm sorry. Yeah, Dalianis. Um, the reason I say Dalianis is because Soraya is actually making movements towards trying to take over some of the transportation that Dalianis has the curve on. And so this is kind of created a lot of tension between the two. And Kimura Kimura's tension is mainly because of Soraya's pirate mentality as the leading technological house in the group. you can imagine that they're usually the #1 target of any Saurian technology acquirement teams. um, so there's a lot of hostility between Kimura and Soraya. Um, I I guess I should also note. Well, it's pretty self-spoken, but Soraya is also a purist on the agenda spectrum. Each house also has basically a primary and secondary influence. Basically, the houses, or a planet where basically they have the most presence. For example, Cipriani has a primary influence over Mercury because of their curb on the energy market. They obviously, Mercury is the biggest draw to them, so that they can maintain that energy monopoly that they actually have. There are also secondary influences on this Cygnus Alpha, which is over here. So basically, you have to go to the Qingdan system and then take another leap up here to the Cygnus Alpha system. All in all, let's see, that's 14.5, 37.5. That's 52 light years away, basically. Then there's House Dalianis. Their primary influence is basically contained to this sphere right here, with Olympus and Luna, with their primary influence being Olympus and the secondary being Luna. Jinzan, primary influence is Shoyue, Shoyue, I guess. And they're like all the way out here. Let's see here. 8.5, 47.8. That's 55, 56.3 light years away. And their secondary influence is the Earth quarantine. So, as I said, this might get a little confusing because you're probably thinking like, okay, if Earth was evacuated and nobody lives there, why are there 3 cities and 1.7 million people living there? That is actually the Jinzan stations that are floating around Earth maintaining the quarantine blockade, is what that is. It's not an actual city on the planet. At least I think so. This Vantage I'm not too sure about. We'll see what happens when we play through the main quest, but I'm pretty sure that all of those are just stations that are floating outside of Earth. Then there is Kimura, which is a primary influence on Chengdan, which is right there, and Olympus in Mars. Then there's Silva, whose primary influence is Luna. Secondary influence is Phobos, which I'm guessing is a city, because I don't see a... Okay, where is Phobos? Aha. Phobos, where are you? Let's see here, just 1 second. Let me go to the Prox, Sanctuary. Aha. Nope, not it. Not it. Nope. Nope. Oh, okay. Well, hey, I found Vantage. So Vantage is a space station between Earth and Luna. So boom. Ah. I'm gonna have to get back onto the Phobos because it's not listed. Now I am using I guess I should note at this point in time, I should have said this at the beginning. I am using the player's manual. For all these games, you usually have two divisions of books, one player, one GM. The GM does have a lot more detail into it, but it has a lot of the stuff that the players don't really know, things that are supposed to come as a surprise and things like that. So for y'all, I'm presenting the player's manual so that any surprises that come down the line are still surprises to y'all. And yeah, I'm just gonna have to come back to the Phobos because it's not listed. I have no idea where that is. But apparently Silva has an influence there. And then last is Soraya. Their primary influence is Proc, this planet. Right there. And with their secondary influence on Luna. So for the most part, you can tell that everyone is kind of in the Luna or Mars sphere, with a couple of outliers in some other planets and stuff like that. All other planets are basically mixed powers. The ones I mentioned, their primary and secondary influences, those are where those houses have basically the majority of influence there. Now, as I said, a lot of houses share Luna and Mars, more specifically Olympus. The reason that they both have influence there, even though it's supposed to be air quote major, is because that there's kind of a balance and power set in place between the houses that share those influences. If it's a primary influence, they might have like an upper edge on the secondary influence houses. For example, Silva has a primary influence on Luna, whereas Soraya, Dalianis, and Soraya and Dalianis have secondary influences on Luna. So you would see the three houses, but like it would be divided into like a 40-30-30 split of influence, with just a little bit more leaning to Silva, but balanced enough that the other two can say that they have secondary influences. And that's pretty much it. Those are the houses, basically the history that's gone on in the game. Technology-wise, I think I've covered everything. I gotta say this, I'm making this video after we did our first recording, so I can say that I'm really excited about seeing where this goes. It uses a different role system than Pathfinder, and it can certainly lead to some pretty interesting situations. I'm sorry, Raz, by the way. So I really hope y'all enjoy this. If you have any questions, just post a comment, and I'll try and answer any and all your questions. Of course, if you have a question on a certain video, you can post a comment there, and once again I'll answer it then. And I hope y'all enjoy the series as much as we have so far. So I'll see you in the game.